Okay, John, it's all yours. Can you hear me? Hello?
Mike's not on.
Mike's not on.
I was just going to welcome and introduce you, unless you wanted to do something.
Yeah.
The script.
I got all mixed up.
Well,
It's one of the problems with fame. You get kind of dizzy.
Shall I hop behind the podium and offer some?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Fantastic. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Taves, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. On behalf of the store, I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. And before we get started, we'd just like to acknowledge that McNally Robinson is located here in Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Métis Nation. We are here tonight to celebrate the launch of Ron Romanowski's latest poetry collection, featuring new and selected poems, Heart Blooms from the Garden of Poet, Flora Fauna Ecology Politics, new and selected poems. This event is, of course, being presented as part of the 2023 MayWorks Festival of Labour and the Arts. So I won't say too much because I will be calling up Ron to say a few words about this collection in just a moment. But the one thing I do want to say is there will be an opportunity for you folks to ask questions if you'd like at the end of the event. So following the reading, if you do have any questions, just put up your hand and I'll run over to you with a microphone, which is just to ensure that those watching at home can hear your question. At the end of the event, you can all join us on wandering over to the signing table, which is just beside our cash desk, where you can get a copy of the book signed. And I'll have some exciting details about signing procedure at the end of the event. But for now, Heart Blooms from the Garden of Poet is avant-garde writer Ron Romanowski's 9th poetry collection. His first, Sweet Talking, was published in 2004. His 8th book was If 30,000 Strikers March Today, in commemoration of the centennial of the 1919 Winnipeg General Strike. His work has appeared in numerous journals and anthologies and has been read on national CBC radio. Recently, he won the Gimli Icelandic Festival and the Lake Winnipeg Writers Group Poetry Contest. His work continues to find beauty of vulnerability in the natural world and hope in an alternative politics for our planet in a challenging, entertaining, and often humorous manner. Ron tends gardens in both Winnipeg and Ranbury, Manitoba, but is here with us tonight. So please join me in welcoming Ron Romanowski.
John, wow, you got a melodious voice. That's beautiful. That's okay. He can put up with me because we've been joking with each other for years. So, anyways, I got to make sure I have my script here. Oh yeah, thank you, John Taves and McNally people and everybody out tonight. Yes, I'm Ron Romanowski, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2023 MayWorks Festival of Labour and the Arts, and to my 9th book. Heart Blooms from the Gardener Poet. So if this is too small to read like it is for some people like me, I've got the bigger version here. This is my 25th event at McNally's, or thereabouts. John might disagree with me, I don't know. And my 25th MayWorks event as well. I must mention that you can get more information about MayWorks. There's quite a few events this year. MayWorks at mayworks.org. and poetry videos on the MayWorks Winnipeg Facebook page. So we are keeping up with the 21st century. So all my books have been launched here at McNally's. Well, that's quite a bit. That's 9 books, and all have been bestsellers so far. But as a sign of the times, bear with me for a moment. Please be patient. Hello, hi. I, Ron Romanowski, do solemnly swear on my own poetry that none of this book has been written by artificial intelligence, Chat GPT, Google Genius, or Microsoft, whatever the hell it is. I certify that it is all my own original human work. So help me, the muses of poetry. Amen.
Hallelujah.
You might be hearing that more often in the future. I see some familiar faces out there. People who've probably been to every book launch. Once again, thank you. I guess you didn't get enough punishment the last time. So welcome back. And I'd like to point out John H. Bailey. Thanks for that glorious review you wrote. If anybody wants to read it, come to me or ask him. It's available on his beautiful literary website, or blog, I should say. But it has been a while since I've been back here. And 2019 was my last book, If 30,000 Strikers March Today. And then some thought, including me, the days of mass protest might just about be over. Everything was going to be online. But you don't hear much from those people anymore. Hong Kong came and all the protests all over the place, from left and right, everywhere. And so how prescient that book's title was. I'd also like to say thanks to Bob Armstrong for mentioning me in his column on Saturday Paper Chase. And I'll just quote from there. It says, more than 50 years after starting an environmental action club as a high school student, Winnipeg poet Ron Romanowski is inspired by the need to save the planet in his new collection, Heart Blooms from the Gardener Poet, Flora Fauna Ecology Politics. So thanks, Bob. Really appreciate that. Yeah, he's right. But it was only, I was the only one in that club 53 years ago to be exact, and probably just as historical interest to the people who are interested in the environment. In my school's environmental club, I was the only member, but I called the club Pollution Pro. I got all kinds of info from, I hate to admit it, a university in Toronto. And I did participate in a cleanup of an area at Higgins and Maine, where there was an empty field there. One Saturday with a whole bunch of Mennonite brethren, collegiate students, we picked up all the litter and everything. So that was one project. And then we did a bigger project. I helped organize an environmental symposium sponsored by the NDP Schreier government back then around 1971. We, a few students from other schools, and I even had an assistant deputy minister doing the organizing. So I think the NDP thought, is this going to be a big thing or not? Anyways, we had half the main floor of the Fort Garry Hotel rented for our displays and keynote speakers. Anyhow, there were in total about, 24 people there for the whole day, including the organizers. So I guess environmental disaster was not sexy then as it is now. But now there's millions and billions of people involved. So that's a good thing. Things have really improved. So I've got a pretty good memory, and that can get you into trouble, but that's what you need to be a writer. So I better not forget to read from the book. Sweet little baby of mine. Isn't she sweet? Beautiful, beautiful color. And I'll start. I just got a sore hand because I got my first gardening wound of the year. I was fixing my watering hose, putting a new nozzle on it to save buying a new hose. And I cut myself. So I guess that's going to be the first of many. Anyways, the first poem won the 2020 Lake Winnipeg Writers Group Poetry Contest. So you can blame somebody else if you don't like it. It's the very first poem in the book. Weeding my garden at Grand Marais, why can't I see the pastoral visions of the great European poets? This dew-soaked morning, I can't seem to connect with the pastoral aristocracy of poets. Weeding my garden, I can't feel their community, their intimate confederacy, the cosmic unity. These days, we're in the pit of a viral pandemic, a catastrophe that has made anxious even the normal fret of gardening. But in all the 100 years of gardens here, this plot always blooms weeds best. Here, where once the forest and marsh had their versions of perfection, my soil enshrouded hands argue with the pulling and strangulation, because I'm down on my knees in worship to an alien idea of garden that this morning strikes me as inarguably strange. Weeds are only plants in the wrong place. Plants are only weeds in the right place. And I so wish to be in the wrong this morning, all wrong. I don't care if anyone sees me like this. Just let me dig until my nails are raw, here in our longtime family garden and childhood animal graveyard. Canaries we interred in shoeboxes, others, white mice, and that dear dog I can barely remember. Oh, I want to touch a bone of what I once fed, sang with, played hide and seek with. In these impersonally distant times, we cannot even be with our people when they die. Let melancholy ride me as I purposefully heave the earth. I turn my sorrow into mourning by hand with memories beneath the weeding. Gnarled hands on dandelion hide, my hands that churn the soil that is a broken horizon in miniature. And that is what to look forward to. The return to the broken, the size of my solipsistic grief, the size of my fear in society. Down and out like the warm soil, cakey, my fingers. A poet mortician who seeks to be a poet coroner. I turn my anxiety into mourning by hand and memories beneath the weeding. The weeds which I shall keep and name as bouquets of sympathy. Elbow ache, the promise, sore back, the sacrifice. Some mild sunburn as the calming quotidian. And when the morning is done, I believe that I will deserve generosity from an exact noon of reason. For my weedy effort, let order be somewhat reversed, muddied, therapeutically toppled, even a little. This morning soil might then have been moistened with a few pastoral tears. Thank you. Of course, from worse, it only gets worse. My next poem, I want to place in the Winnipeg Free Press, the coveted Winnipeg Free Press spring poetry section, which was just published in, you might have seen it in April, but I was in the April 2020 edition. When one cataclysm melts into another. On last autumn's cruise, I heard a Norwegian glacier scream. The first wail had been of the glacier's sickness, how it had swooned under pressure, and without pleasure it became the astringent of its own demise, rotting from within itself, done with itself, never to desire again that swell of a continental mount. The sickness pissing by, the romance flushed, as a Shakespeare with no lovers on stage. And last night I heard an American mountain sob. This second lamentation could only be a mountain's illness, how it crumbled under oppression and weighted misery through the enigma of its own allure, gritted from within itself, ministering to itself, ever to require the spreading of a continental shelf. That thickness gone by, those eons flaccid, Walt Whitman shorn of another multitude. Thank you. My next poem was published in the Solon Literary Journal out of La Mirada, California in 2020. And it's for my dad who died in 2020. Ever alert to the rain at the end of time, for George Romanowski, 1924 to 2020. In the distances, in the wet choruses of grace, some are reunited. Some find their listed beloved, drenched and unconstrained in form and limb. Familiar gaits and smiles, those souls that were lost found again. Let there be fragrance, unremembered nearly, rainborn like that of Eden's, sainted world forest, the wet, the return, the monsoon vision, perfumed like the great universe, joy pollinated by the memorial rains. The ever-refreshing cosmos, lying in dew on the lawns of sunrise, trees in generous groves, pious on their turf, the ever-ensconcing trees. Now, my dad, he was 100% Canadian and 100% Polish. Some people might understand how that works. So I'm going to read the last two stanzas in Polish in his honor from Sainted World. So anybody who understands Polish, or just bear with me, it doesn't take that long. Uświęcony światła smokrzy, powracający pielgrzymi, monsunowa wizja, pachnąca jak wielki wiek świat, radość zapilana deszczami wspomnień, wiecznie odradzający się kosmos, leżący w rozie na trawnikach wschodu słońca, drzewa w hojnych gajach, pobożne na ich terenie, na zawsze zaklęte drzewa. There you go, Dad. My poem was translated by Maggie Koboliński. She's a Polish poet, part of a Polish group that I work with. And we've been working together now for 10 to 15 years doing poetry readings. And I hate to say it, but usually we have 50 to 100 people out. That's how popular poetry is to Polish people. She's got a new book out called Kolory Świata, Colors of the World. And I don't know if it's been translated yet, but anyways, Her translation is in the Solon Journal website as well. The next poem I'm going to read is from the, I won the 2021 Gimli Icelandic Festival of Poetry First Prize with this one. And I was very proud to do that. And I just had such a wonderful experience reading there. We got to Gimli, Liliana and I, and I think we had a minder who took care of us. Would you like some water? Would you like this? Would you like that? And they had a fantastic introduction because they had a whole bunch of local musicians singing and dancing and stuff. And that's the best thing to start off poetry. And so I was the last person and everybody was all warmed up and I got to read this poem. And just recently I donated this poem to a charity, the 2023 Manitoba Angel Dresses fundraising calendar. I'm the August poem. And you can find out more about it if you're interested at www.manitobaangeldresses.com or see me later. Anyways, here it is. Destination Funeral Iceland. Mama and Papi see little sword to his funeral pyre. Because it was foretold in his baby rooms, because little sword's dragon's name was Sturm, because they revered their beloved bird. Landing at Keflavik, they began their sacred way. A winged flying dragon electric hearse led their entourage. An electric boreal unicorn pulled behind it wagons of mourners. Little Sword's banners fluttered over the highways. His Icelandic horse was tethered among Little Sword's chests of toys, his favorite blankets, his baby books in Icelandic, whose letters he used to trace with his tiny fingers. There he rides in the open casket carved by artisans from the basaltic rock of fiery Hekla. Mama and Papi will see Little Sword home. Truta Ford is their destination, where the shark ship Ofe was found. Their weighted steps, the last duties of parenthood carry them on. This great morning route to the last ship of their little one. With deliberate gravity as befits their elegiac quest, they travel the whole of the day. And just before sunset, they reach the torches that lead them to Little Sword's ship. His dragon boat will be laden with all his toys. The hero's horns will be sounded. The last rites sung. Mama and Papi will be the last to embrace him. Mama whispers, I gave my own milk and did not complain when you bit my nipples. And Papi whispers, I wiped away feces and removed mucus from your nose. We always embraced you gladly, Little Sword, ever near the end. They will sing their farewell songs as all heave Little Sword into Ramsfjord, a light sailing to the ever welcoming gods. Thank you. Well, have a little bit of sci-fi for fun. Yeah, why not? Okay. Or maybe I could be an elitist, high and mighty artist and say, this is conceptual art in capital letters. But no, it's just a poem. I have a feeling that conceptual art was invented by poets hundreds of years ago. And what conceptual art has become is just poetry hung on a wall or poured out into a performance area, whereas poetry has always been conceptual. This one especially, I don't think it's ever going to come to pass. The rings around Earth, the holographic field, the aurora. Poems upon experiencing the artist Anonymous of Iceland's global COVID memorial. Iceland again, why not? And I forgot to mention that this is a fictional artist named Anonymous of Iceland. She created a fictional COVID memorial, and that's what the poem's about. The rings she had designed around the earth were of ice. Yes, to evoke tears, that of the victims, their bereaved, and every caregiver. For everyone who had struggled and suffered, they shone over all the earth. The rings had been positioned orbitally by all Earth's nations. Yes, they represented tears that had been shed and the blood, bodily fluids that had erupted, the losses that had flowed, ebbed and flooded. And when the shimmering rings would come down, eventually melting, they would rain upon the grief-stricken, the drought-swollen earth. Yes, I saw the rings over the holographic field of remembrance. Anonymous had built upon the basalt barrens under Hecla, eminence in the distance. There were recorded the names and images of all the COVID dead. Here they all came to life for those bereaved that visited. They wore the holographic helmets and spoke with their loved ones. And when they had finished, they had what they had. And the rings towering over them, and the aurora borealis, and volcanic Hecla. Yes, those who could not leave became attendants, attached to the site in grief and service. Thank you. I have a little bit of information that I'm just going to look for here. Every time we do a reading, I make a script. I always get lost. That's the worst thing. Anyways, that's the last one. Okay, this one. This is a very important one for me because a very important person is here to hear it. Here's a poem for a dear friend. This was published in the 2021 Right to Move anthology, edited by Winnipeg writer Sharon Chisholm. Anyhow, it's about a musician friend and a real mensch. He was one of the reasons I took up music 10 years ago. I'm an amateur musician. I sing tenor, everything from classical arias to art songs at the music festival to jazz duets with Liliana. She's in the front row. Musical theater, and don't tell anybody, country too. But I think it was about 10 years ago that I was told that music makes your poetry kinder. So just be happy that if you think my poetry is mean now, it'd be a lot worse if I didn't sing. So here's the poet for a great old friend of mine. From birth to war, from army to prison camp, from music to Canada, from marriage to Israel, from Romania to Kaddish, in memory of Sam Knacker, artist and friend, 1921 to 2016. Bulgaria is a garden, you once told me when I'd asked. Sam, maybe my memory of you is like a crystalline star, suitable for a snowy people, fragile, but if I'm careful, it will even hold all the tomatoes of Israel you once gloried me with. Somehow I also want to patch on that time at the lake deck when we drank all the wine. I had brought bottles for 6. It still wasn't enough. Intoxicating Australian bubbly Shiraz. Is that because I need a potion just to stay with you on this star? It's only a snowflake because it suddenly snowed the day of your funeral, and my winter tires barely held against the grain after an impulsive U-turn to park right in front of your temple, which seemed, when inside, almost as spacious as your melodious Romanian soul. I want to hear you singing somewhere, your high tenor. I will follow the words of the rabbi at your funeral. You are with us as we go, as long as we remember you. And I can still hear you standing on one of the melting points of this crystalline star. Your soaring tenor, maybe reaching up to where the snowflakes are made, somewhere where they are sent down with a certainty we don't have, where Bulgaria is a garden written on a snowflake. I've got one last poem, and I must pay tribute to Danny Shore. Everybody probably knows him here. Winnipeg's late famous playwright and great friend of MayWorks. Somehow I've got many other elegies in this book. I guess it's just a matter of getting older. All beloved people. But Danny, the famous Winnipeg artist, musician, composer, and entrepreneur, just passed away recently. He adopted our MayWorks Festival because it marks the anniversary of the Winnipeg General Strike of 1919, which was the subject matter of some of Danny's great work. Strike the play, Stand the movie, and many more dreams to come, but he's not going to do them. and his Dream of Strike being played at the Canadian Museum of Civil Rights, just as Anne of Green Gables is in Charlottetown, PEI, may it yet come true. Anyway, here's a poem for Danny. 1966 to 2023. The playwright buried in the park. He wore a park today over his shoulders, half dressed by lawn, a weather-beaten grove of oaks, where ornamental gates crown his regal head, his hair flowing into leaves of autumn. Once he had framed the seasons, painted the trees in words, captured the scent of flowers in songs. Now go to find him in the living morgue of the park. There he lies in parts, the nooses of notes strung around his neck, in wriggling fragments worn by worms. Lay him down, obliging park, his last mattress the hollow of a tree. Cover him with years of growth, let roses breathe from his mouth, sanguine monuments to spring's air. A wild rose grows through the bleached bone of his jaws. It was by an act of will that he created beauty. An act of landscape made him beautiful. The earth's seal, the cooling kiss of loam. Thanks, Danny. And thank you all for coming out. If you want to purchase the book, I'd be happy to sign it for you. I think John from McNally's will be making arrangements. And also I can answer a few questions if you want, if you have any questions.
That's right. If anyone would like to gently interrogate Ron, just put your hand in on the microphone. If there are no questions forthcoming, we can certainly move along to signing.
Okay, great.
Fantastic. So Ron, we'll be signing books just by a table beside our cash desk, which is just over there. So you can feel free to join us on the parade over to that area.
Great.
There are copies of the new book at the table itself. There are also copies at our cash desk. Please do feel free to get a copy of the book signed before you pay for it. Just please do remember to pay for the book before you leave. Otherwise, thank you so very much for joining us here tonight. I've been planning events with Ron for many years now, so such a pleasure to be back at it and back through it.
Yeah, this is one of the few we've done together, but we're usually going back and forth on email. If you want to know anything about books, just ask this guy, because he knows about them all. I try to stump him sometimes with something really obscure and good. It's got to be good. And he's already read it or heard of it, so.
Oh, you're
Thanks,
so
John.
on the occasion. Thank you, Ron. And please join me in applauding for Ron Romanowski one more time.